That was wonderful, Morgan. I have no idea if the stream caught that. Good morning, good
We're gonna
afternoon, and
go
good evening,
see.
everyone. It is 8:31 Eastern Time,
It did.
7:31 Central Time on March 13th, 2025. My name is Nate. Up there is Morgan. And we've got a really interesting stream for you all tonight. For those of you who are with us last night was interesting. All right. Tonight, tonight here, I hate to build up the hype, but realistically speaking, this is where we get to figure out what exactly is going to be happening on Saturday. And I'm pretty sure the majority of you guys know how high of a ceiling Saturday is. All right. Saturday, realistically speaking, could very well be, and I said that I would hold off until tonight to say this. Saturday could more than likely be a high risk. All right. Right now, all right, if we go over to the graphics and we go over to the Storm Prediction Center and we show you the outlook for Saturday alone before we even get to the other stuff. All right. Saturday is a 4 out of 5 on the severe weather scale. This could very easily become a high risk. As a matter of fact, chat, I have a little bit of interesting information for you. A little interesting caveat, all right? There has only been one time into which there has been a day 2 high risk issued. Only one time. And that day, which was, I think it was what, April 12th, 2012. It's
I know it was
something in the
April.
early
I know it was
teens.
April 12th, 2012. I
As
will go cross-reference actively.
you know, all of a sudden I cannot hear Morgan, which is legendary. So let's see if I can figure this stuff out.
That better?
Why you no work? It's definitely on my end, more than likely.
I
More than likely, it's on my end. All right, we are turning my headphones off and then turning it back on. That is what we are resorting to. We are doing the old internet turn off, turn back on method in hopes of fixing our thing. Um, there we go. I can hear Morgan now. That's pretty cool.
April 14th, 2012.
April 14th, 2012. The only day to have a day 2 high risk.
And it was a double-barreled high too.
It was a double barrel high. It also had two 60% SIG-TOR risks. Now, I'm not saying this is what we're going to get on Saturday. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be honest with you all. We are not touching a 60 SIG. We're not. It's just as simple as that. We are not touching a 60 SIG. But depending upon what could happen with some of the models tonight, and I've already seen some very interesting stuff from the wrap that we'll show you here on stream as well. There's a very good chance, chat, that we could get our high risk tonight, and we could very well eventually on day 1, when we actually get to Saturday, we could potentially see a 45% chance for tornadoes if the models stay consistent. The big thing here is consistency.
I was speaking to my chase partner today, and he and I were saying that if the environment continues to play out as is, and we're going to get into it, the sheer it is an unbelievable combination of ingredients, folks, that are coming together to produce this day. Or at least looking like they will come together to produce this day. And I'm actually going to go cross-reference something that we were talking about last night, which was how the trough actually ended up progressing through the area last night into this morning, and see how that did for us. But if you are on weather Twitter, there is a 0% chance that you are not in the loop of the madness that has unfolded in this afternoon's suite of model runs, and a few different ones as well. So there's a lot to talk about tonight.
And just to add a little bit of piggyback to what Morgan just said. First off, Morgan is actually going to be chasing this event. He's going to be chasing tomorrow, and he's going to be chasing on Saturday too. And of course, we'll be live both days, and we'll also more than likely be live on Sunday, even though Morgan won't chase it that day. But he's going to give
You will
us.
not catch me going to the Carolinas for
He's going to give us some pictures, some videos, sometimes if service allows it, some live feed as well. But he's going to also give us some real good insight as to what's happening on the ground. And to piggyback on the chaos that's unfolded and stuff like that. I actually talked to my boss on my other job that I have, which is during the day, not during when storms actually do form and stuff like that. And I told him, I said, listen, is it okay if I get on the microphone tomorrow when we do our stretches and we do our announcements to just let people know? You know, that obviously the people that I work with don't live in these areas, but they might know people who may live in these areas. And I would rather spread the news, spread the information, bring light to this event so that way more people are aware and that way more people can be prepared for these storms when they do move on through. So that's the big thing here that we always preach on this channel. We want to continue to bring awareness to these storms, awareness to these significant events, and just really awareness to weather in general, so that way no one can be caught off guard, no one can be surprised on what happens on a given day of weather. So that is
James Spann.
yeah, go for it.
James Spann today has had a number of good lines, both in written text and in some video stuff that he did for ABC 3340 today.
And before
One
you
of
even
those
say that, James Spann, for those of you who don't know, before Morgan continues, is the guy that covers the Tuscaloosa and the Birmingham, the central Alabama areas. Longtime meteorologist, legendary meteorologist, covered the super outbreak of 2011, yada yada. Continue, Morgan.
If you know his name, it's because of what he did on April 27th, 2011.
Yeah.
So he went on today and said a few different things that I think need to be kept into perspective here. Because this is real, and this is coming up in the next few days, and we are going to be keeping very close attention to these outlook areas, the amount of people that may be impacted, perhaps stretching the risk into different parts of the deep southeast. I don't think there are many more metros this can be stretched into. I think they have the moderate risk for Saturday, just barely including Birmingham, Alabama. It may not be including Huntsville at this time, but folks, these
It's
people
close.
that are in the southeast, yeah, it's very close. It's within margin of error at this point, and is within the severe hazards risk that they have lined out. So, folks, the point that we are trying to convey here from an effective communication perspective is that in the next few days, we are looking at a perhaps, I'm going to quote the SPC's terminology here because I can barely catch myself saying this, but we are looking at perhaps a few days, or excuse me, in a few days, we are looking at perhaps a destructive severe weather day with all hazards severe thunderstorms in play for these areas of Mississippi and Alabama especially, but on a broader area, parts of Tennessee, Middle Tennessee, including Western Georgia, as well as the Florida Panhandle and the Mobile, New Orleans. New Orleans. I didn't even think about that. New Orleans is in the moderate risk as well. That's a big populous area, folks. And we need to be keeping in foresight here the actual people being impacted, how they can be effectively communicated to properly prepare for this risk that we have coming up in the next couple of days, because there's a lot that can go wrong with a lack of preparation. There's a lot that can go wrong with the storm system to begin with from a threatening to life and property perspective, but it is the best means. Let me try that again. The best way to be able to prepare in advance for this is to know your severe weather plan, to have a severe weather kit ready with you. That includes food, that includes water, that includes medical supplies and medications, that includes knowing where your nearest storm shelter is. And when we say storm shelter, we don't just mean a car or something like that, or the most innermost room in your mobile home for something like that. We mean storm shelter. We mean concrete rooms. We mean below ground storm shelters. We mean something like for clarity and conveying what I'm talking about. Something like a beer cooler or something like that in your local gas station. If you have something like that, that would be one of the best areas to go to. Ideally, you will be in a sturdy structure with an innermost room. Perhaps you'll have a basement. But in any case, if you do not have one of those accessible to you, you need to find one. And you have 2 days at this point to be able to do so. But it is important that you are being proactive, not reactive. That I feel is the one of the biggest things when it comes to severe weather preparedness. You need to be preparing for this in advance, regardless of whether or not anything happens to you. We have outlined the risk, or we haven't. The SPC has outlined the risk in the next few days for something possibly to happen to you if you are a resident of the Southeast. That also goes for Friday's risk as well, where we have 2 moderate risks in the next couple of days, folks. This is
Absolutely.
bang bang.
Yeah, so it's once again, it's very important um, for everyone to understand. And I understand a lot of people down in the deep south, they may not have basements because, some areas are below sea level. But it's important regardless, all right? Basements innermost parts of sturdy buildings, all right, such as bathrooms and closets, or as Morgan said, beer coolers in gas stations or, local grocery marts. Stuff like that could be the difference. Could very well be the difference between you being safe and you not being safe. I'll tell you what isn't safe is a mobile home. A mobile home will not keep you safe during a significant event like this. If a tornado is heading down into your general vicinity where a mobile home park is, I have seen 60-mile-an-hour winds obliterate mobile home parks. And that's only 60-mile-an-hour winds. That's well below tornado thresholds. And yet we're talking about significant tornadoes being possible in this event. Please, 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 all right, have a plan of action ahead of time. All right, it is very important for you to plan ahead now. We have about 36 hours before the event on Saturday is anticipated to really start to get going. All right. Within the next 36 hours, it is important for you guys to start formulating a plan so that way, if the worst case scenario happens, you are prepared and you are able to act vigilantly. That is the key word right there. You're able to be prepared, you're able to be safe, and you're able to act
Proactive, not reactive.
perfect. Perfect. Some other tips and stuff like that. Tornado safety. If you do decide to stay in a sturdy structure, or if you try to find a sturdy structure, or if you're on like a second level of an apartment and you ask your roommates down below, or not your roommates, your neighbors down below, hey, during a tornado warning, can I hide out with you guys? The other things that is also helpful is getting helmets, getting pillows, getting mattresses, or getting furniture, and continuing to put more and more walls in between yourself and the outdoors. If you put more walls, that's more protective barriers for in case if debris does move through, or if a tornado does move through, or if something falls on top of you, you're able to be protected. All right. You want to protect yourself. The majority of injuries in severe weather events, not just tornadoes, but even damaging wind and hail events, most of those injuries are from head injuries. And so if
That's
you're
something Span said today. As I forgot to mention that. That's a good point.
Yeah, most of these are head injuries. You can even get large pots and pans and put them over your head if you don't have a helmet. I know some people may not have these, but I know almost every person who owns some form of home or owns some form of apartment, they do more than likely have culinary items that could be able to try and help them be help them have a barrier. Just once again, as many layers as you can in between yourself and the outdoors as possible. That's the key thing here. All right, I think we've done enough talking about the potential. I think we need to show. I think we need to show exactly what we're talking about here. And we'll start out first with tomorrow's event here. This is basically the beginning event that will eventually lead into Saturday. This is Friday's severe weather event, where we do have the potential of once again significant severe weather ranging from portions of Iowa all the way down into central portions of Mississippi and western Alabama. We also have an area right in the middle that we kind of highlighted last night. We said areas that are basically ranging from southeastern Iowa to northeastern Missouri and western Illinois is going to be seeing a lot of significant wind. And that just so happens to be the case to where the 4 out of 5 is also at. But they also expanded it a little bit further down south in case if that line continues to extend. And as we saw in the models this morning, and if you saw my video this morning, that line did extend. That line did extend down further towards the south. And so you have a lot wider area of coverage into which you could potentially see more damaging winds and more potentially spin up tornadoes. We also have an expansion of our 3 out of 5 on the severe weather scale further down south. And this is fully determined on a conditional mode to where if some storms do form down here and they are able to sustain, they will more than likely produce some strong tornadoes and some large hail. That is just pretty much the cold cut truth with that right there. If storms form, tornadoes could happen, and some of which could be strong. That's just the best way I can put it, the easiest way I can put it.
Objective and straightforward, and there's many signs that he's going to get into in a second that I know he's going to get into because I know how his brain works that show you we really are looking at an incredibly potent environment for Saturday and for Friday. But it's just, again, like I mentioned, if you're on weather Twitter, you have seen, and I've been tweeting today as well about like the numerous little features beyond just, the 2 meter dew point and wind barbs or mixed layer cape or hodograph maps or something like that. The subtle features such as the waves in the isobars indicating short waves, perhaps some of the perhaps some turning in the wind barbs note, which shows some veering in the winds and also some divergence in the air. There's so much that is there's so much that is in front of us right now, folks. It's truly unreal what this is looking like it may shape up to be.
Absolutely. And we'll kind of get into the kind of precursor to that for the tornado aspect of things as we look at the tornado outlook for Friday. A 10% chance of seeing a tornado within a 25-mile radius, and you can also see there is kind of this black mesh area here as well. This is a hatched risk for significant tornadoes that are possible within that area. A 10% chance or greater probability of seeing a significant tornado, which would be EF2 or stronger. And so, big thing there to note, big thing there to understand is that a lot of these areas over here, the Storm Prediction Center, the folks over in Norman, Oklahoma, near Oklahoma City, really do feel confident that if a storm is able to really spin up over in this area, it could more than likely produce a strong tornado. So definitely something to consider for the folks that may live into some of these areas. I think, honestly, an equivalent thing to look and watch out for is the significant damaging winds for tomorrow. Absolutely, is that a widespread risk. And with the hatched risk here too, if you guys notice here at the bottom left-hand side, that's hurricane force wind gusts, ladies and gentlemen. All right, it is very much so possible that we could see hurricane force wind gusts within that mesh area that I was talking about earlier. So really something to watch out for here for the folks that may just be living in anywhere in this mesh. Notice how I'm not even talking about specifically about the colors of the yellow, the red, the pink. Anywhere really within this mesh could be seeing hurricane force wind gusts that are possible within this area. All right. I know sometimes people like to look at the colors and say, all right, well, this is where it's more likely to happen compared to some of the other areas. But in this style of event, with what we have tomorrow, it is truly going to be as widespread as it possibly can be. And it's going to try and cover as much ground as it can as well. So just something to consider. Big wind event tomorrow and big tornado event that is possible tomorrow as well. All right. Here's the other
And
small. Go, Morgan. Actually,
I was going to say, and with everything that's been talked about today, I'm actually just scrolling Twitter right now. And with everything being talked about today, I'm seeing a couple of tweets now come into my timeline saying everyone's talking about Saturday and not enough people are talking about the nocturnal tornado threat tomorrow. Folks, we still have a moderate risk tomorrow. Again, we showed you the he showed you the outlooks, and he's now showing you the forecast kind of storms that we're going to have, and we're going to have mixed mode severe weather as well, possibly at different times for different locations. Tomorrow's very complex as well and cannot get lost in the yammer slammer of whatever's going on Saturday and the jargon about Saturday possibly being a high risk. Span said in his video today, could it possibly be a high risk? Probably. That doesn't matter. He said that it does not matter. What matters at this point is the effective communication of you all to anyone that you know that lives down there, of the people making these forecasts to us as well, so that we can continue to spread it person to person, who can spread it to another person, who can spread it to another person. It's a very chain linked reaction. Starts with us.
and I know people get tired of hearing people on YouTube whenever they try to promote their channel and stuff like that. The reason why us weather people try to promote our videos and promote interacting and stuff like that, it's to boost the algorithm to try and get these parts of content, all this stuff of content here for weather, out to people who could potentially be impacted. That's what the YouTube algorithm does. It actually shares it with people who could potentially be interested or who could potentially be in the path of these storms. So when you hear a weather YouTuber say, subscribe or hit that like button or share it and stuff like that, all right, they're not doing it because, they're greedy. I would like to think some actually have a little bit of heart, but it's more because we truly are trying to just spread the information with as many people as possible. And it just so happens that by doing those select things, you actually help the YouTube algorithm do that for us. You could obviously, take the content and share it with people that you know. You could share it on social media. You can take the words and you can put it into context with anything that you want. But we truly are, just to put the point home, just to repeat myself one more time, we truly are trying to just spread the information with people who could potentially need it. That's all it is. All right. The last bit of the last bit here for Friday's event that I want to talk about, there is the chance for some significant hail, up to golf ball size or larger. It would be along that line that builds up from southeastern Iowa all the way down into portions of Mississippi, and some of which could even be a little bit more favorable along the Mississippi River from Quincy all the way down towards where Paducah is at. So definitely something to note if you guys live in these areas. If you have any valuables outdoors, if you have any pets, or if you have any cars, put them in, under some form of shelter. That would be definitely recommended for tomorrow night, as large hail up to the size of golf balls and even larger than that could definitely do damage, and it could definitely hurt people. So just one thing that I wanted to mention with that. We will get into Saturday's event after we talk about tomorrow. Tomorrow, I think it is important to make sure that it is not overlooked, because it, in my opinion, is going to impact still a significant amount of people, probably the same amount of people as it does impact on Saturday, at least from a radius perspective. A radius
Zero
perspective.
ZH triple R just initialized as well. So we'll be able to use the model data we get coming in over the next 30 minutes or so to help you understand that as well.
And just for reference, to kind of put this home as I take Morgan off the screen, just for a little bit, I'm going to zoom in here to show you guys the area population for Saturday. All right. And I'll compare it to what it looks like for Friday. All right. We have a good amount of population in the moderate risk, about 7.7, almost 7.8 million people that lives within that moderate risk. About 17.1 million in the enhanced risk, and about 27 million in the slight risk. The slight risk is very large on Saturday's event. But let's go over to day 2 real quickly. All right. Area population for the moderate risk, it's about the same, maybe a little bit less, just a little bit less, but still about the same size. The amount of people that could potentially be impacted by these storms tomorrow night. All right. Enhanced risk, it's definitely a little bit down. All right. There's fortunately not as many people that live in some of these areas. All right. But if you take a look at the slight risk, that's 28, almost 29 million people that live in the area that could potentially be impacted. So,
And some big metro areas too: Chicago, Kansas City.
absolutely.
Just
Indianapolis,
it's
Nashville.
it's all through the upper Midwest, folks.
Yep. So, just that's the reason why I personally want to talk about Friday first, and then Saturday will naturally evolve as, once again, when we pull up the HRRR, all right, you can see we've got our timer ticking at the top left-hand side. Those are the hours that are coming in, which will be able to tell us as to how far the HRRR has gone into the event, or gone into its running, to be able to tell us what's going to be happening. Not just on Saturday, but even to a earlier degree on Friday too. So let's talk about Friday first. Let's talk about Friday first, so that way we can just be able to get this through and try to make sure everyone is on the same page. Will, with the 5, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. Says, Nate, what can we expect in Noonan this weekend? Anything serious? Really, if there is anything that you guys could be getting, it would be the stuff that would be moving on through from Saturday into Sunday. More than likely, you guys would be getting some stuff on Sunday morning, sometime around then. The times into which you guys could be getting stuff is a little bit wonky, all right? But I will use the NAM 12 kilometer to kind of try and get just a general overview, real quickly, of what everyone could be seeing. That way we can kill several birds with one stone at the same time. So let's move on through. Timing is at the top left-hand portion of your screen. It is in Eastern, so if you are in Central, subtract 1 hour, all right? We move on through. Afternoon into the evening. Big line of storms start to form over here from southwestern Iowa all the way down into central Missouri. You can pretty much see why they issued a moderate risk for areas in eastern Missouri now, because we just really have a huge line that extends further and further, and it will continue to move on through. A lot of these storms over here as well could potentially produce supercells. We could potentially have some supercells that form off into southeastern portions of Missouri and northeastern Arkansas. That is definitely the place to do it. Once again, there is the potential for some strong tornadoes that can form off into that environment. Look at this big curly Q low pressure system that really starts to fire off here as we head over from Friday night into Saturday. This actually starts to weaken pretty significantly as it moves off towards the north and east, as we get our new low pressure system that will then begin to develop here on Saturday. Storms, once again, into the overnight hours, around midnight, give or take, a little bit after midnight, start to move on through the Chicago, the Indianapolis area, even a little bit beyond that into Nashville, into Saturday morning. And here we go on Saturday morning. We have some storms that are going to start to form across the board over here already in our significant risk. Now, I'll be honest with you guys, all right, and this might be a little bit of a hot take, but I really do believe it is possible that some of these storms could also be tornadic in the morning. I do believe firmly that it is possible that some of these storms in the morning could be tornadic in their own right. And that could catch a lot of people off guard. A lot of people off guard.
You're talking like what time of the morning at this point? Because
we're talking the morning convection. The morning convection.
Like the 8 to 9 a.m. or the 10 to 11 a.m.? Because there's a big difference there.
The answer is yes. I do think that if you can get a storm that is able to form off and sustain, given the environment, they could potentially be tornadic. Now, big difference here compared to the morning, compared to the afternoon. The morning will not be anywhere near as significant compared to the afternoon. All right? If you do get something that is tornadic early off in the morning, it will more than likely be around a mid-range supercell, and if it does produce a tornado, I don't want to say it's going to be weak, but it will be not that intense. Not that it's not going to be the violent tornadoes that you could potentially see later on in the day. It would be somewhat
Absolutely
subdued.
not.
All right. But once again, still something to watch out for as we head off into Saturday. Saturday afternoon, absolutely. Look at all this. We have our warm front that is across the board over here along the border of Kentucky and Tennessee. And then down here along the dry line and the open warm sector actually extends all the way into eastern Alabama, which is crazy enough. This entire area over here, from the Tennessee border on the northern side of Mississippi and Alabama, all the way down south towards the Gulf Coast, could very easily be a part of the main significant risk. We could definitely see the potential for some significant activity. We'll zoom in here specifically with the North American model, and you can already make out some of these storms having little hook-like appearances here, especially as we head into the evening hours as well. A lot of these storms, once again, will more than likely produce tornadoes, some of which could be violent, long-track tornadoes that could span for hours. So, once again, folks that are over in these areas definitely need to watch out. And then we'll go off to the east here. We'll show you guys as this progresses into the overnight hours. More storms continue to build up. Some strong damaging winds really start to materialize with some spin-up tornadoes in and along the line. Heading into Georgia now, sometime around 5 in the morning, give or take. And these storms, as they continue to head off to the east, will then start to elongate into a larger line that will actually expand into portions of Pennsylvania as well. And so a lot of these storms will then have tremendous amounts of coverage in regards to the severe weather setup that we have here. Good news for Sunday, it doesn't look like it's going to be as significant of an event as the previous 2 days. It'll primarily be more of a damaging wind event, more than the tornado risk in itself. The tornado risk might actually be a little bit more subdued, but we'll have to more than likely have a better answer to that come tomorrow night when the new high resolution models come out, which is exactly what we're waiting for tonight to get an idea as to what exactly will happen on Saturday. So it makes sense that 24 hours from now, the same would happen for Sunday. But it looks like Sunday's event would be a lot more of a damaging wind risk with some embedded tornadoes in and along this entire line that extends, once again, from northern Pennsylvania all the way down into portions of Florida. By the time we get past midnight, folks, the only areas that could potentially be seeing some severe weather is down here in southeastern Virginia, give or take, maybe the Delmarva Peninsula, and then potentially, I kind of doubt it personally, but potentially even some areas over here in central Florida as well, near Orlando. That is where you could potentially be seeing some severe weather. But other than that, if I didn't call your area and you're west of these storms here on this, at this point here from Sunday into Monday, the event's done. The event's over with. You don't have to worry about severe weather at that point. But it's just the lead up to all of that. You can clearly see how there are a bunch of storms that are building more and more and more, and it's just constant multiple waves as it continues to move on through.
Two things I want to address at this point. I want to talk about the remark that Ariana made with the $10 donation, saying, "I know it's farther out, but riding this out, pregnant toddlers. I'm in Augusta. Should we get out of town?" As Nate just mentioned, by the time the storm system is getting to about that point, it is going to be transitioning to a much more damaging wind linear risk. So, in the state that you are in, timing of storms impacting your area is likely going to be towards the morning hours on Sunday. It is probably not going to be as significant as the other things that are going to have occurred in the area prior to the day on Saturday. So, in the instance of this storm system, where we're looking at Friday to see what could perhaps happen with Saturday in terms of troughing development. Saturday is going to be pretty representative of Sunday on a large scale basis, as in, if we have a lot of severe weather on Saturday, we're likely going to have a lot of severe weather on Sunday. Severe weather on Sunday, though, is going to be much more weaker, much more linear. It's probably going to be confined to that corridor of the East Coast that we're talking about. And no areas in particular that we can see right now might be all that significant, but we'll continue to monitor that in the coming days. I also noticed something in chat happening right now with mentions of F5s and EF5s and stuff like that. Folks, I mentioned earlier what Span said about if it goes high, what's it matter at that point? Because we're just focused on effective communication, stuff like that. And I take the same perspective with the strength of tornadoes. The
Yeah.
reality of the situation is we have a very significant, dangerous event forecast for Saturday for these residents of Mississippi and Alabama. The point to make at this point is to effectively communicate to them, to prepare them in advance for what's happening right now, not worrying about what the specific numbers are going to be with a certain tornado or something like that. That is so not a problem right now. And we won't know anything that happened or the ratings of anything that happened in the area until likely weeks, perhaps months after the event. It takes a long it takes a long time.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. It does
I
take
shall
a
not curse, I
long
shall not curse.
it does take a very long time for some of these ratings to happen. And if there are as many tornadoes as a lot of meteorologists and people who monitor this event think there is going to be, it might even take longer due to the fact of how much they'll have to basically comb through. So, definitely something to watch out for with that. But we'll go in here to the specifics of Friday. First off, we talked about moisture being an issue with this event. All right. Moisture is definitely an issue with this event, but it still can roll off of the significant damaging winds that it has. Regardless, it is still helpful for moisture to be evident in this environment. We want 60-degree dew points or higher as we head into the bulk of Friday. And the bulk of Friday is really from the 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central time frame and onwards. That's where we typically are going to want to watch out for maybe the more significant storms to try and form. Maybe not, they may not form exactly at that time period, but it's when the window of opportunity starts to open. And so we look at our window of opportunity here, we get into 4 p.m. and notice how dry we are north of St. Louis here at 4 p.m. Central. This is dry, ladies and gentlemen. All right. This is 40-degree dew points in weather is dry for severe events. As I said, we want 60-degree dew points. They're all down here. They're all sitting down here in the deep south. They're ready for Saturday. You want real moist dew points to try and get up into that environment to try and get some sustained activity. They're not there. And so
For perspective on what that means in terms of dew points, folks, I'm just going to jump in briefly here. Cold is to warm as dry is to moist. And when we use dew points, we're just measuring basically where on that scale we are at. In the instance of 40-degree dew points, if it was 40 degrees outside, many of you would need a jacket. In this case, similar to that scale, like I talked about, cold to warm, dry to moist, we're on the drier end of that when we're in the 40s with dew points.
absolutely. And, that's the reason why I mentioned earlier 60-degree dew points is what you typically want to look for, is because that's where you usually get into moisture. That's where the relative humidity goes higher and higher. The closer the dew point and the temperature is together, the higher your relative humidity is. And as a matter of fact, we'll go real quickly to the relative humidity. We'll show you guys exactly what we're talking about here. How moist is it? It is not so moist out in front over here in the portions of western Illinois and central and eastern Iowa. We're talking relative humidity values in the 30s. 30s to even 20s. That's not that typical. Usually on severe days, they are a lot higher than that. You typically see a lot of these greens down here. But they don't. You don't have that. And so what ends up happening is you have a lot of this dust, a lot of this dry air, especially aloft. It starts to merge with the storms that do try to form. And when they do form, it's kind of like the best way to put it is when you throw a water balloon onto the ground, all right? The water balloon pops and the water splats everywhere and it rushes quickly, right? That is pretty much in a vacuum what the storms do when you have dry air with it, all right? It forces the water balloon down to the ground really quick compared to if you were just dropping it normally. And you end up getting some sustained damaging winds that is able to just really surge on through and push out about. So, once again, pretty dry here. A lot of people are asking, why don't I use Pivotal for dew points? The big reason here is because Pivotal, in my opinion, doesn't actually illustrate how dry it actually is in this environment. This is pretty dry. All right, once
Their
again.
color palettes are a little weird for that. Yeah, they're still in the greens when you're in the 40s, and that's just not representative for severe weather purposes.
Yep, absolutely. So, once again, dew points, absolutely something to watch out for. And the other thing too, Pivotal, it doesn't really have the regions like Weather Bell does. So I'm not able to get a full sweep with everything compared to Pivotal Weather. Pivotal Weather only has smaller regions. This is like one big region that I can be able
Another
to
reason
Yeah,
another reason that Nate uses it is because I'm gonna let y'all in on a little secret here. Pays a ton of money for it.
I accidentally paid a ton of money for it this year, actually. I wasn't even going to use it, and then it just happened. So,
Well,
but
here you are. You might as well, right?
I might as well. I might as well. So, if it doesn't have a whole lot of moisture to use with these storms, what else is there with it? Well, what is driving these storms? Well, before we get into how significant the wind shear is, there is some energy that's out in front of this. Remember, we typically want around 1,200 joules per kilogram of CAPE. That's kind of the darker greens that you see on your screen right now. And we do have that. We do have some darker greens in some of these areas, but we also have an area of energy down here, which gets up to about 2,000 joules per kilogram, that starts to move off towards the north. It starts to build up and it starts to head off into eastern Missouri and southern Illinois. And this is what's going to be really interesting here. Can these storms utilize this energy? Can this moisture that's down to the south reach up north in time to really impact a lot of these storms? The answer is the furthest north that this moisture can get is at the northern part of the moderate risk, right there in southeastern Iowa and western Illinois, as well as northeastern Missouri. That's as far north as the moisture and the convective available potential energy gets. That buoyancy sits and stops right there. Anything north of that is pretty much going to be a lot of damaging winds with maybe some spin ups. But once you start to add that moisture, once you start to add that moisture content into the thunderstorms, that's when things start to get really bulky. And so your dew points, they start to recover a little bit. Your energy definitely can be there. But let's get into the specifics here, at least in a second. We got to thank some people here in chat once again. I really do appreciate people who support the channel and people who are even watching here live right now. Jasmine with the 5, thank you so much, really do appreciate it. Says, hi Nate and Morgan, nice to see everyone again. Thank you for everything. We appreciate everything y'all do. May everyone stay safe. So thank you so much once again, Jasmine. I really do appreciate it. And I honestly really do hope people stay safe through this event as well. There's so much stuff that's going to be happening from Friday all the way to Sunday. There's just going to be a lot of area to cover, and hopefully a lot of people understand what's going on. And then April with the $50 super chat. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate that. Long-time member here of the channel, long-time moderator of the channel, April. Once again, thank you so much. I really do appreciate the support. that you have constantly provided to the channel for all the years that you have been with us. So thank you so much. Um, let's go in now specifically
Ooh.
to our significant wins. This is absolutely going to be a thing. I want to go take a look with the Euro model for the 500 millibar wind shear because the HRRR doesn't have 500 millibar wind shear. And I'm assuming you're looking at tomorrow's event with the HRRR as it's probably gotten in range.
We're at about 19 hours. I'm noticing some interesting things here with moisture return. It's really, really strange. What were you about to go into? I don't want to truncate you if you're gonna.
I was gonna get into wind shear, but I just got off of moisture. If you want to talk about what's happening with the new HRRR.
So I want your input on something here that I'm not quite understanding. And other suites of the HRRR picked up on this, but it's a little farther south in this run. A dry slot through the middle of Missouri.
Yes.
And I will note, even with that dry slot, it appears that moisture return out of the south is trending upwards. It is, if you look at 18Z dew points, compare that to the 18Z run, you'll see a plume of 60 degrees that's making it much farther north and much more expansively north than it was in the last couple of runs. But that dry slot is interesting, and I wonder if you had 2 cents on it.
Yeah, so first off, that dry slot is definitely a result of our deepening low pressure system. So our deepening low pressure system, as it gets into the occlusion phase, which is the latter stages for people in chat who don't know, it's the latter stages of it starting to decay. Basically, when you have a decaying low pressure system, it starts to really wrap in pretty much anything it can get. And there's a lot of dry air back behind this system. A lot of dry air and a lot of strong winds too, which is the reason why there is a significant fire risk as well.
Extreme fire danger. Yeah, I was going to say that.
A lot of this dust and a lot of this dry air has been pulled out in front of this risk already. And it's kind of just sitting in the open warm sector of Missouri and Iowa, which is the reason why, once again, we saw in the HRRR run earlier that there just simply wasn't as much moisture over in those areas. But now you can see moisture starting to try and creep up the dry line just a little bit more. That is definitely interesting, I will admit. But I did mention last night, if you remember it, Morgan, there were 2 areas along, I think it was the HRRR that I was looking at. Maybe it was the NAM 12K. There were 2 areas aloft of inversion. It was about, -9, -8 degrees Celsius inversion at 700 millibars. And it sat over the area pretty much until moisture return fully got into the environment, which would be in the late evening into the overnight hours. And when storms started to develop more.
Despite that dry slot, the moisture return in this instance is sharper. And another thing that I'm noticing, or excuse me, 2 more things that I'm noticing. Number one, that fire storms in Missouri much earlier on this suite than it did in any of the other ones. They're up by 21Z, which is just east of Kansas City, and again, much earlier than we were perhaps anticipating that to be. But another thing that I'm looking at in the more southern portion of that moderate risk is in the advection of those 60-degree dew points, there is a lot of wobbling in those wind barbs, which is indicative of another strongly, I don't know what the action tense of vorticity is, but there's lots present, seemingly.
There's definitely a disturbance. There's a disturbance somewhere in the lower levels of the atmosphere, accompanied by vorticity. So I think it's just fully dependent then upon if the storms that form will they be able to not immediately grow up scale.
Mm-hmm.
Once it's one thing to form It's another thing for it to, translate to a tornado threat immediately. You know, I think in the very beginning, up until we actually get that moisture into this environment, a lot of the stuff will likely be a lot of hail and damaging winds. So the stuff over here in central Missouri will likely see a lot of that. But once you start to see that moisture return really start to move off towards the north, and
This
that,
is this is a major change. Finish your thought, and then I have one.
yeah, once you start to see the bulk of these blues, a lot of these 60-degree dew points really start to march off towards the north, and stuff becomes a lot more moist along the boundary, that's probably where you're going to want to look out for some more significant storms. It would be sometime in the early evening to late evening, heading into the overnight hours, sometime around then. Go for it, Morgan.
This is a major change, folks. So between the last couple of runs today and really the entirety of the day today, the HRRR has been improving moisture return. But this is a move by more than just a few miles. This is a jump of about, I'd say, 30 to 50 miles to the north of those 60-degree dew points by 0Z
Oh,
on
yeah.
Saturday, and it is making these soundings go. Here's something to consider, folks. The reason that I think this is occurring is the front appears to be a lot sharper, and one more thing, it appears to be bulging with southeastward extent. This indicates to me that the southerlies have been trending, or this indicates to me that as a result, the southerlies are going to be a little bit more intense than they were previously forecast on different runs. And that as a result of this, we could be looking at storm initiation maybe a little bit earlier than we were initially anticipating in that Mississippi River, Ohio River Delta region, possibly back towards, I'm thinking, 0, 1, or 2Z rather than 3 or 4.
Yeah, I definitely see what you're talking about with the boundary and how it's oriented. It may not look a little different, chat, but this is what it was at 6Z, the 6Z HRRR run, which was earlier this morning. All right, and you can clearly see it is kind of tilted. It is definitely slanted a little bit more, oriented from the northeast to the southwest. You get to today, this area over here in central Missouri, it is almost north-south. It is almost north-south orientation here. And that makes a lot of difference. The main reason why that makes a lot of difference is because the winds that are traveling along the boundary are going to follow almost exactly along the boundary. So if you see down here in Arkansas, all right, notice how the boundary is a little tilted to the side, all right? It's a little bit more diagonal. These winds along the boundary are going to be parallel. It's going to be parallel to the boundary as it moves up. So when we talk about a boundary that is almost north-south oriented over here in Missouri, these winds are going to be coming from the south. And why is that important? The big reason here is because when we look at wind shear, especially aloft, all right, we'll go to the 500 millibar wind shear here with this HRRR run to be specific. And we'll go to single image so that way we can just hop around. Well, no, we'll go to forecast loop and we'll just kind of hope for the best with that. All right. So when we look at our wind shear here, notice a lot of our winds in the upper levels are coming from the southwest and moving towards the northeast. All right. So we'll create a little arrow that represents our upper level wind shear. We'll go to the 850 millibar level. We'll go to the same time, which is at 0Z. Okay. And notice here, okay, the winds in some of these areas are coming little bit of a difference. Southwest, maybe south-southwest, something like that. But it's starting to come from a little bit of a different direction, especially out in front of these storms. So anytime these winds move in the same direction perfectly, that's where things can start to become a little bit more linear. You start to get a lot more of a strong damaging wind risk more than anything. So when we talk about the boundary being more north-south oriented, the wind, especially along the boundary, it's never in the same direction. It's never in the same direction. It is veering with height, and that veering with height is favorable for tornadoes if given the opportunity. So that's the big thing here. That's the first major difference that we have seen with this HRRR run. We'll have to see if that stays consistent first and foremost. And we'll give you, of course, an update in our video tomorrow morning, which will once again be uploaded at 9 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Central. So make sure, if you haven't already, hit the notification bell, which is just next to the subscribe button if you haven't already. But we'll see if that stays consistent. If that stays consistent, chat, we will be looking towards a little bit more of a significant tornado threat over into portions of Missouri.
This uptrend is a huge deal, Nate. This is because of that north-south orientation now, the front creates a little bit more forcing along it. And combine that with the increase in the moisture, folks. If you've been keeping track of what the model actually considers to convect,
wow,
hasn't really been doing it. This time it does it. The combination of the punching in from the dry line to the south of it, the increase in that moisture, as well as the winds turning just slightly back out of the south-southeast, just slightly, that fires supercells in that plateau area of northeastern Arkansas and southeastern Missouri. And I don't know about Nate, but I think if they are going to outline tomorrow, and I don't know that they will, and I'm just going to preface this by saying I don't know that they will, it's perhaps even not a likelihood that they will. But I think if they're going to outline perhaps a 15% chance of tornadoes and up the probabilities, it's going to be in that region. It's going to be in that region where they're considering the possibility of discrete supercell formation. And in this model run, in this model run specifically, there looks to be so. So we're going to be needing to keep track of how the models continue to portray it. But that's a bunch of different supercells. That is a line of marching supercells in western Illinois, in southeastern Missouri, northeastern Arkansas, into an overnight hour in which it becomes very dangerous for storms like that to be happening.
And you know what? A lot of these supercells too, especially once you get to 2Z. I showed chat earlier the moisture content as it got up. The moisture, the 60-degree dew points actually got up to St. Louis. It got up to St. Louis, and it was able to really just kind of set up almost a mini triple point in those areas. The HRRR is showing some real intense activity here, even up into portions of western Illinois as well. A lot of these little tunnels that are accompanied by these storms are something called helicity tracks, updraft helicity tracks. It basically takes the most significant activity of some thunderstorms once it hits a certain threshold, and it prints it if it has happened over the span of the entire frame hour. But if once we get to 3Z here, 3Z, 4Z, this is riding on an axis of some significant moisture, some relatively high amounts of moisture. And these storms really ride for a good bit. I'll tell you, from 23Z, all right, which is about 6 p.m. Central and onwards, that's really going to be, we talked about the window of opportunity for storms to form. This is the window of opportunity for significant storms to be able to take place in this environment. So, once again, just to drive it home, all right, we've got a pretty significant event that is anticipated tomorrow. We'll once again show you guys here with our convective outlook before we get into the significant winds that are associated with these storms. All right, and we showed you guys a little bit briefly, but what exactly it means, we'll get into it a little bit in depth while we wait for the 0Z HRRR to give us a full idea as to what's going to be happening on Saturday. And as I said, Saturday is more than likely going to be objectively worse than Friday. Objectively, in regards to a ceiling in regards to its ceiling. So we have a 1 out of 5 on the severe weather scale here in the dark green. I wouldn't really think about it too much for the people who live in the green here, at least on Friday. We have a 2 out of 5 on the severe weather scale in the yellow. I definitely think you guys should pay attention in case if storms could veer out of the general area of where severe storms appear to be more likely. We have a 3 out of 5 here in the orange and a 4 out of 5 here in the red. That's the area into which we could probably anticipate our significant storms to be located. Regardless of the nature, whether it's tornadoes, whether it's large hail, or damaging winds, it's right within that area. That is where we can anticipate a lot of our significant severe weather on Friday from the afternoon into the evening, and with eastward extent even into the overnight hours. So that right there is that aspect of Friday. I want to show you guys here real quickly the wind shear here, and then once we get done with the wind shear, we will get into Saturday. Saturday, the event that everyone's been waiting for, everyone's been talking about, the potential for a 5 out of 5 on the severe weather scale. Saturday, we will get into that after this strong wind shear update for tomorrow. We'll take a look here at the 500 millibar wind shear. Once again, the upper level wind shear here, and you can see it comes in with some strength. We have some strong winds in the upper levels that starts to move on through, and then it starts to lose its way a little bit. And the main reason is what I said earlier. This is actually in the process of decay once you start to get into the evening and into the overnight hours, and you simply just have the remnants of that storm, the remnants of the significant wind shear that just resides within the entire area to begin with. So pretty strong wind shear here, at least to start out with. But once you start to head further and further overnight, because the wind shear in the upper levels start to wear out, the sustainability within a lot of these supercells will then start to come into question. We will start to lose a lot of our long track storms that we'll try to develop because there isn't enough ventilation. Basically saying, I'll paraphrase, if you will. If you have a pot of boiling water, okay, and the boiling water creates steam, and the steam goes up into the sky. If the steam condensates and then it comes back down as rain, the rain will actually limit the steam to an extent because it's two air masses that are fighting, all right? It's kind of slowing the other. But if you have wind shear aloft, let's say you wanted to cool off your pot, you wanted to blow the steam, you wanted to blow the bubbles off of your boiling water, let's say you're making pasta or whatever, and you blow on it and you push the steam away, it's allowing the pot to build new bubbles, new steam, more steam, so that way it's able to freely rise and it's able to continue to do what a thunderstorm does. Creates a lot of rain, a lot of wind, a lot of hail, yada yada. But because you start to see the wind shear start to decay as you head into the overnight hours, it then becomes a time game. How long will these storms be able to sustain until they actually start to wane? So, big thing there to understand with this environment. Regardless, with our, let's actually go to our 300 millibar jet streak first. There is a big thing here to take away from this. Big thing here to take away from this. Anytime you have a trough, all right, the wind shear that dips down just like this and curls, anytime you have a concentrated area of higher winds and the leading edge of it starts to veer off in all sorts of different directions, this is a typical area into which you want to look out for sustained severe weather. This is what we like to call difluence aloft, which essentially means that you have wind that is veering in all directions and it is creating gaps in the atmosphere that need to be filled. And the way that those gaps are filled is with the air that is below it, because you can't get anything that's above it. You're at the 300 millibar wind shear level. That's pretty much as close to space as you'll get it. All right. Maybe not actually, but it is pretty much as close to as you can get it in this part of the atmosphere. And so, seeing this, all right, you can be able to correlate, oh, well, look at that. At the leading edge of the jet streak, all right where the reds start to phase out into purples, that just so happens to be where our significant severe weather is going to be. We correlate that, of course, with our 850 millibar wind shear here, which, as you can see, as we build up from Friday morning into Friday afternoon, our wind shear really starts to ramp up. Look at this here. Friday afternoon, we start to get a lot of reds, even some yellows in some of these areas. We get some very strong lower level wind shear here, and it is right in the area into which we need those gaps to be filled, which is where a lot of these storms are going to be located. So we have some very strong wind shear. We have some decent moisture, all right? It starts to get better once you get past the 6 p.m. Central Time frame. And you have some decent energy. You put that together, chat, you have a pretty significant severe weather event that could potentially happen heading off from Friday afternoon into Friday evening and into the overnight hours on Friday.
Okay. This is weird. This is really, really strange. I want you.
If you can hold that thought, I want to do something real quickly, but I will. Tomorrow with the 20, thank you so much. I really, really do appreciate that. Your support to the channel really helps out a lot. Thank you so much for the $20 super chat. Keaton, with the 24 months, 2 years, my goodness, of dealing with yours truly. I don't know how you deal with it. I don't know how you did it. Thank you so much. It says, hey, Nate, 2 years and counting. Yeah, these models are the closest thing I've seen to a textbook event. I'll tell you what, when the HRRR fully gets done with its 0Z run and we see what's happening tomorrow, yeah, it pretty much... I said this to someone earlier, and I haven't said this often. The last time I said this was, ironically, on March 31st, 2023, but I still, of course, in my heart, will compare that to Easter, and Easter, in my opinion, will always be the more significant event out of the two, at least in my opinion. I haven't seen stuff like this in Dixie from Soundings since Easter, since prior to Easter, when I was looking at the models with the HRRR and the NAM 3 kilometer and other models and stuff like that. April 12th, 2020, the Easter outbreak of 2020, I haven't seen stuff like what we're seeing on the models right now since then. That's the food for thought that I have for this event, pretty much. And that's the reason why everyone is so confident that this will likely go into a 5 out of 5 on the severe weather scale. It's just simply because it's pretty up there. It is pretty intense, at least on the models. But thank you once again for the 24 months of being a member. I really do appreciate it. Hell Advocate with a tornado tracker. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate you guys as well. And by the way, all the people who are members and stuff like that, after this event is done and over with, and I want to make sure we're transparent ahead of time, the next event that we have, all right, and events that go on even beyond that, first off, the night before, we will have a live stream, the same thing that we're doing right now for the general public, all right? But the day prior to that, when the convective allowing models such as the RAP and the HRRR come into view for the first time, you guys will be able to see that. Members only, all right? And you'll get my initial reaction of what is exactly going to be happening, at least according to the models. It's not exactly, but it's the general environment of what could potentially be happening. For the first time, it'll be for you guys members, for you guys being supporters and sponsors to the channel. You guys really do fund the channel, and you guys deserve some form of treatment, some form of something for you guys. So just wanted to let you guys know it's not just being sponsors anymore. You guys are also getting some exclusive content as well. But once again, Hell Advocate, thank you so much for the tornado tracker. I really do appreciate that. And then Tamara with the 20, thank you so much. I really do appreciate that. Again, says, I live in Alabama. Our tornadoes are the worst as they are often at night, rain wrapped, and hidden behind mountains. Stay safe, friends. Thank you for all you do. Well, thank you so much for supporting the channel. Once again, I really do appreciate it. Thank you. It really does mean a lot. I see some people in chat asking if this is going to be a nocturnal event. The answer is yes, but it'll be only in certain stages. So it's fully depending upon where you are looking at and what you are looking at. Scrolling on through, I think we had one more super chat that just came in. Tomorrow with the 50. Oh my goodness. Goodness gracious. Thank you so much for supporting. That truly does mean a lot. So thank you. Wow. Thank you for all you do. Family is also sending this along. Thank you once again. It is a very generous and kind donation. So thank you so much for supporting the channel. All right. Well, we just had another super chat, and then Morgan, you can give me your thought. Keaton with the 20. Oh my goodness. Thank you guys so much for supporting. Really do appreciate it. Says, quick question. Do you think that, if possible, if there is enough breaks in the cloud cover in the deep south, will there be enough daytime heating to destabilize the atmosphere further? What is your take on that? I do believe that will likely to be the case if that were to happen, but I don't think it will. I think there's going to be a lot of morning convection, and if there really is the breaks in the clouds that are going to destabilize the atmosphere, it'll be a lot further south, and it will it'll advect up into the environment. It'll be a lot of the energy. A lot of the energy in itself right now is actually located in the Gulf of America or Mexico, however way you want to call it. I call it the Gulf. I call it the Gulf because it's a Gulf. It's our Gulf. It's someone else's Gulf. It's water. All right. But a lot of energy in the Gulf right now, and it's just being pulled up into America. That's where a lot of the energy is going to be at. So there you go. There you go. And then Justin with the 10. Oh my goodness, you guys are kind of going crazy. Thank you so much for the 10. I really do appreciate it. It says, think the tornado threat will continue into northwestern Georgia. I've noticed a big downtrend with today's models with the eastern extent. I think it's going to be a little hard for us to be able to kind of determine with that until we get into probably the 6Z or the 12Z HRRR, or let alone even I would say probably the 9Z wrap. The 9Z wrap would probably have a good grip on what could happen with eastern extent. I personally think that the significant tornado threat is still possible there. It'll just be along the line and the embedded storms that'll be in the line. It will be nowhere near the significant activity as it will expect to be, as we expect it to be into portions of Mississippi and Alabama. So, definitely something to note with all of that if you are further east. All right, Morgan, give me your thought before someone, for whatever reason.
The extra forcing is going to throw a wrench in this because you need to go look at Gulf Coast and see how there's, like, I know we're not overly concerned about convection, but there's too much. There is, and it recovers decently. The environment recovers decently. But the eastward extent of the warm front is truncated, and the north, for that matter. This is very interesting because we talked about how that front and the shift in it is helping with forcing in the northern risk, but this is the same storm system, and it's also helping it in the southern part of the risk, creating some really weird interactions.
So
it's a big storm line that goes up through Mississippi.
So first off, we all can see the dew point here. Some very high dew points across the board in a lot of this area. The model run is pretty much almost done here, guys. So We'll show you guys the reflectivity and what the model says first, but a lot of very high dew points in much of this area, so moisture content is definitely not an issue here, at least to start. Let's take a look at the reflectivity. Let's react to this live. Storms begin to initiate into the late overnight on Friday, heading into Saturday. Quite a bit of storms here. It looks like, yeah, the storms that form in the early morning really push off and try to hamper some of those storms. Yeah, there's definitely the chance for some of those storms to try and hamper at least the Alabama side of the risk for the early afternoon hours. But man, oh man. Oof. That is still...
It's still a ridiculous environment, and Mississippi is still, regardless of if that happens, still in line for a very large
There's
day.
still supercells that are along the coast, too.
Yep.
Oof. Not to mention that one supercell that casually goes near Vicksburg.
I know I'm taking a more
One,
slightly off-put
two,
tone with this.
3, 4, 5 supercells in a line.
This doesn't change it in the grand scheme of things, folks. This doesn't change the event that much.
Yeah, that is...
Pivotal is so slow with loading soundings because everybody is loading sounding.
Oh, absolutely. But that... Wow. This is still a bona fide... I think the only thing that would stop it from being anything worse is absolutely the convection that forms late Friday night into Saturday morning. That is the only thing, and it's only that. Like, even the storms that form in the early morning off of the confluence band, that stuff isn't even that bad. It's not even that bad, to be honest with you. All right? It's the stuff that forms that was over here in New Orleans that goes up into central Alabama. That stuff tries to let down the environment just a little bit. But I don't even think it does that swell of a job of it fully. And there's still some pretty well-pronounced supercells that even get up into portions of Tennessee. So this will eventually start to move on through into northwestern Georgia as well. Northwestern Georgia, we just had a talk about that. The models, it looks like northwestern Georgia heading into midnight could more than likely see a nocturnal threat for you guys as well. We're talking southern Tennessee and southeastern Tennessee, as well as central and northern Alabama and northwestern Georgia. Looks like you guys are going to be in the crosshairs here, heading into the evening and the overnight hours. In the afternoon, it has Mississippi and western Alabama all over it. Written all over it. That is exactly what it is there. I can't get over how many supercells there are in a line, organized in a line. And the inversion aloft seems to be enough to limit some of the weaker storms to make it at least semi-discrete. Which makes it even crazier, to be honest with you. So this is definitely still a high-end scenario here. I absolutely believe that we'll see a high risk by the time we get on to Saturday. We'll see. We'll see, honestly, if they issue a high risk for day 2. My gut instinct says right now that they probably won't unless if it's during midday tomorrow. They'll probably introduce the 15 tour, and they'll need to try to they'll need a little bit more guidance with the models as to what specifically could happen overnight Friday into Saturday. But yeah, absolutely. I do believe, in my honest opinion, that we should be watching out. This event is definitely something. All right. Let's get into the specifics with Saturday now that things have started to finally develop to that stage. We'll get over here. Morgan, I think your camera just died. Or maybe Morgan just died, period. Which is fine too. That happens. We'll do that right now. We'll put our camera that's up in Grenada, Mississippi. So, moving off here, now we're starting to get through as what the heck? Why is that? That doesn't make any sense, what I just saw. Oh well, there we go. So, 500 millibar wind shear once again starts to move off through, and then we have a new low pressure system. All right, here's our old low pressure system. You can see the swirl in our winds at our 500 millibar level. Now we can see a larger, more looping swirl here that starts to develop, and a pretty well pronounced jet streak too. Remember, out in front of the jet streak, okay, out in front of where the main significant winds are, right over here, is where you want to look out for your significant activity. The good news is, if you take a look at the top left-hand portion of your screen, it's still morning, all right? So you have some strong winds that are over in these areas. Maybe some concentrated, weather could occur, just like what we saw with the HRRR, but not anything significant quite yet. That's the reason why I said earlier in the stream, the stuff in the morning, it could potentially be tornadic, but it's not quite there yet, all right? And then you start to get into the afternoon and the evening, and you notice out in front of the jet streak, once again, that's where our significant weather appears to be. That is where our winds start to veer a lot more. And this is where we're going to be getting a lot of significant weather to be located at, especially down here. The further south you are, the closer to this jet streak, the more intense it likely will be. And so that is definitely something to note with that. We'll go over here to the southeast, show you guys our low-level jet at around this time, which is absolutely raking. I mean, this is some real intense low-level jet winds. We're talking low-level jet in upwards of about 68, 69, almost 70 knots. That's pretty strong. Usually our average with our low-level jet in most severe events is somewhere in the reds, somewhere around 35 to 40, 45 knots, somewhere around that area. So the fact that we're getting a good 20 knots more than that, that's about 80 to 85 mile per hour winds that are with our low-level jet, which is about 1 kilometer above ground level. So very strong low-level jet winds here are associated with this thing. We'll go into the HRRR now. We'll take a look at our cape here, our cape levels. Actually, it might be better for us to go with just the regular pivotal here at this point. We'll go into our mixed layer cape. Mixed layer cape, I favor that a little bit more than a surface-based cape, because mixed layer cape actually... surface-based cape can be traditionally overdone in an environment, and it takes... This is very difficult to explain. The best way to put it is, when cape is being combined, it's being utilized in the atmosphere, it usually is being utilized from the mid-level or a little bit below the mid-level to the lower levels of the atmosphere, not everything else. And so surface-based cape can sometimes be associated with everything else, and there's something about mixed layer cape that is just a little bit more reliable in regards to what storms can actually utilize, or what is available to be utilized, is the better way to put it. So, mixed layer cape here, we can take a look as we head over Friday night into Saturday. Big streamline of energy that starts to move on through into much of the environment. This basically sits in this area for quite some time, which is the reason why some storms actually form around that New Orleans area that we were talking about from Friday night into Saturday morning. Those storms will end up moving over into portions of Alabama. But look at this area here, guys. This is a very condensed corridor of high values of mixed layer cape. Remember, it only takes about 1,200 joules per kilogram of cape in order for you to get some sustained severe weather that produces tornadoes, at least on average. You get up to 2,000, even an upwards of 2,500 joules per kilogram of cape, and you're looking at a pretty potent environment that is available for a lot of these storms. And it actually gets, to some degree, even higher than that. 2,700, almost 3,000 joules per kilogram of cape in some areas, but even out to where some of the discrete supercells form, it gets well into that threshold of around 1,500 to 1,900 joules per kilogram of cape. We definitely have enough energy for thunderstorms to be able to really sustain in this environment. And this cape doesn't really go anywhere, especially as you head off into the overnight hours. The cape still is there. There's still an abundance of it. It really starts to die out once you get past the border of Alabama and Tennessee, Mississippi, Tennessee, Georgia, Tennessee, right along that border. That's where the energy starts to kind of veer out a little bit more. And so, really, the northern ceiling, if you will, of this is probably the Lawrenceburg area, because some of these storms could veer out. So you could have some significant storms that are in the areas of high energy, and it starts to move out of it, and it will still sustain for at least a couple of, a few more minutes. Mainly being because it just has stuff in the reserves for it to be able to do so. And that's just the best way I can paraphrase it for you. It's not 100% accurate at all, but it's just kind of the best way to kind of think about it, to try and get a grasp on why some of the storms could move off into southern Tennessee. It will definitely not get to central Tennessee, or at least from the looks of it, unless if things uptrend. The only way that uptrends is if this cape, this energy level, extends a lot further off towards the north. If we start to see some of these dark blues get up to around central Tennessee, then we could absolutely see some of those storms head off into the central Tennessee area, like Nashville and Cookeville and stuff like that. But for right now, fortunately, it looks like the northward extent is limited to just southern Tennessee. Looks like it. And then here's something that's really interesting here, at least in my opinion. All right. We talked about thunderstorm sustainability. Look no further towards our 0 to 6 kilometer bulk shear. What is this? Why is it important? It's the difference between the wind shear that's at the surface, the winds that are at the surface, versus the winds that are aloft at 6 kilometers above ground level. And if you have a good displacement between the two, let's say around 50 knots or more, then you will get sustained severe weather in that area more than likely, or at least sustained supercells that could be possible. There are some gaps in the very beginning at around 13Z. That's around 8 o'clock in the morning, which means some storms and some of these little gaps may not be all too significant. But areas in the pink, absolutely. Areas in the pink, you could definitely see some sustained storms. But look at this as we head into the afternoon. Look at this. Starts to get into the purple, starts to get into the red. And that is where you can start to see some real good mechanics for supercells. All right, the mechanics, the ventilation is very robust. It's very active. It's able to reset and recycle, and boom, it's able to become significant still. It's able to continue to sustain itself even further, a lot more than maybe some other storms. It's not as prone to some extra factors, external factors that could try and limit these storms. Instead, it is above average. It might even be well above average in some of these spots as well. So definitely something to note here. Our bulk shear looks very, very good, at least in some of these areas. All right. I am not going to use the significant tornado parameter to forecast. All right. All I am doing is I am looking at environments for soundings. I'm cherry picking so that way I can see what some of the soundings are and some of these. All right, hold up. Before I do that, I still need to understand. Yeah, these popcorn storms that are overnight from midnight and onwards, now I definitely see why there's the potential for some significant tornadoes overnight. It's western Tennessee and northern Mississippi, starting at like 4Z. That's around what? Goodness gracious. That's around 9 or 10 at night. And those storms continue to try and fire up and maybe sustain, heading over to around 8Z, which, once again, goodness gracious, is around 2 or 3 in the morning. So those storms over there in western Tennessee and northern Mississippi could definitely try to create a tornado if possible. Could we see a 5 out of 5 on Saturday? We absolutely could. I actually firmly do believe it will happen. That is what I believe. All right, it's time to cherry pick the environment here, chat. This looks bad, but just don't look into the colors too much. We are looking at the sounding. We are looking to see what the sounding says. Okay. So some of these soundings are definitely interesting. A lot of high moisture content at the surface, so boundaries and short waves of plenty. We'll take a look at that here after I take more cherry picking soundings and stuff like that. But that is a very well pronounced hodograph. I'll tell you what, for people who know how to look at hodographs, that right there is what you want to look at for long track violent tornadoes. Just based off of the wind shear and how much it veers with height. That is absolutely what you want to look for. LCLs are pretty low. I do like that. I would love to see LFCs a little bit further, a little bit closer to the ground, but that just means that there is some inhibition in the lower levels. That is definitely interesting to note here, at least if you want sustained significant supercell development. That is a lot better the further south you go. The open warm sector out in front says it's pretty low as well. So honestly, lifted free convection should be fine. LCL should be fine. Hodographs should be fine. Cape, once again, should be fine. Woof. That's what I gotta say, chat. Woof. Yeah. Realistically speaking, the only thing that really can limit this environment, limit this event, is the storms that form overnight from Friday into Saturday. All this stuff that pops off over here and over here, that right there is what could potentially limit the extent to which there is significant activity that could occur on Saturday. It would also be really interesting to see, because this is our warm front that develops right here from our low pressure system that starts to build Saturday morning. If this is anywhere further north, any more further north, we'll definitely see a lot more widespread of a significant risk. I'm interested to see actually what it was like compared to the 18Z run. This is that was 16Z that I was looking at. So look at that. Look at the difference already here, chat. This is 15Z, 16Z. So that is frame 46. We'll go to the model trend loop. Look at the difference between the model that was earlier on this afternoon versus what just got released. Notice how much further south these storms are. If these storms were as far north or not as of plenty, we would absolutely be having some significant issues. This right here from the afternoon run that we had, that right there is the worst case scenario. So if you want to take anything away of uptrending and downtrending, the energy, it uptrended. All right, it absolutely did uptrend. But the extent into which, or the range to which we have these significant storms did downtrend, because the northern portions of Mississippi, and to an extent, but not really as well, northwestern Alabama, it looks like these storms hampered portions of the northern risk. It doesn't mean that everyone's going to get spared. Absolutely not. You still have a volatile environment, central and southern Mississippi, that will move off into portions of Alabama as well. And you still will get some significant weather up into portions of northern Alabama and northwestern Alabama. All right. I would absolutely count on it. But if there was any good news based off of what this 0ZHRRR said, it convects a lot of storms, and it basically acts like a dam. The dam is holding back a lot of the energy, and for the folks that are further north of that, may not be getting as significant of storms here, at least according to this run. Now, one thing I will say here, chat, all right, when we upload our video tomorrow morning, which will be at 9 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Central. So if you haven't already, hit that notification bell. It's right next to the subscribe button. We will be going through specifically what these storms are going to do. All right. And the timings of it all as it moves off. Because tomorrow morning will be our last video before we start live streaming every single day. All right. Tomorrow night, we are going to be live. Saturday, potentially even Saturday morning, all right, after I get a little bit of sleep, we will be live. Unless if storms don't do anything Saturday morning, into which we will go Saturday afternoon, we will be live. Saturday night, we will be live. Saturday night into Sunday morning, we more than likely, chat, will be live. We will be live covering this as much as we possibly can. We want to make sure that everyone is able to understand what is going on, what these storms could be doing, how significant they can be as it is happening, so that way you may be able to at least feel a little bit safer, hopefully. So, do I trust the lack of an EML with the HRRR with its overmixing bias? Personally think the 0Z is overdoing convection and the lack of an EML. I do think so. Here's an interesting thing that I will say. Go to the 6Z or 16Z. On purpose, we are doing the significant tornado parameter. Let's take a sounding in East Central Mississippi just for laughs. The RAP is one of the best models to look at 925 millibars all the way up to about 700 millibars, maybe even 600 millibars. All right. It is the best model, in my opinion, with getting a grip on what happens here. The RAP has an inversion. The HRRR for a 0Z forecast hour. Excuse me. Let's try that again. The HRRR does not. The HRRR does not. So I do think the HRRR is creating a lot more thunderstorms than it should. I do think that is absolutely the case. To what extent, however, that's to be determined, because I do think it is absolutely plausible that these storms near New Orleans could form. It's just, will they be able to sustain? Will they be able to be severe to an extent? We'll have to see. Excuse me. All right, let's take a look at chat. Let's answer some things, some questions here. They are predicting a high risk of severe weather tomorrow in East Missouri. I wouldn't say so. I think moderate is good. 4 out of 5 on the severe weather scale in that area is perfect, in my opinion. Do not change that. I told someone last night, or no, not last night. I told someone this morning. I said, the outlook for tomorrow's event here, which we'll pull it up once again, is a perfect day one outlook that they issued 1 day in advance. This right here, all right, once again, severe weather risk for tomorrow night for Friday. It should not change very much from this when storms actually start. It should not change. What do I think about Mobile? I think Mobile should definitely watch out for the evening and the overnight threat. There are some storms that will likely form along the coastline, or even a little bit north of that, and just ride that coastline. I do think that could even include some supercells that are definitely possible. So I would watch out if you're in Mobile, or really anywhere along the coastline, ranging from New Orleans, Lafayette, Baton Rouge, all the way as far east as Pensacola. Blood Moon is tonight? Yes, you're absolutely right. The Blood Moon, I don't think I'm going to stay up for it. I would love to, but I got to wake up at 4:30 in the morning to make my video for y'all. And then I have to leave this house for work at 5:30. So I have about an hour to record. And 20 minutes of that is going to be spent in my bed trying to wake up. So we have that. But that's what I got for that. How's North Atlanta looking? On Saturday night into Sunday morning, you guys could see some significant damaging winds and some tornadoes possible. It's hard to say specifically as to what you guys could see, but I do think that sometime around midnight, give or take, is what you guys could be looking at for Saturday into Sunday. It might even be a little bit after midnight as well. How will Eastern Iowa look Friday? So Eastern Iowa, it fully depends upon where you are, but I do believe that you guys will see a lot of strong damaging winds at minimum. Really, the risk that's on Friday does contain a lot of strong damaging winds, but we'll take a look here. Single image forecast loop, local Iowa. Timing, once again, the top left-hand portion. This is fortunately in Central, so you don't have to convert anything here, chat. We'll go to the 0Z run of the HRRR. So storms start to really kind of fire off sometime around 4 p.m. Central. And it starts to kind of become a little bit more widespread, at least the severe storms. Once the line starts to become a little bit more well-defined, this is where you can start to talk about some more strong damaging winds. And Eastern Iowa starts to see a lot of it sometime around 7 to 8. The further southeast you are, the more intense the winds will be. So you can see over here in Burlington, you got some pretty robust rain and hail cores. Got some reds, some pinks, and even a pretty interesting helicity swath right there. Updraft helicity track in that area. Very strong damaging winds will likely to move on through. It could be in upwards of hurricane force, but I do think at minimum they probably will get up to around 50 miles per hour. So definitely a big wind event. And then along this line, you could potentially get some spin ups. By the time you get to 10 and 11, it more than likely will be done. Guys, should be good with that. Think we could potentially get a PDS watch on Saturday? Absolutely. I do believe we could. You don't think they might give a high risk area by AM for day 2? I think if they might do it, they might do it in the middle of the day tomorrow. I think they might do it around then. It's hard to say, though. All right. I do believe personally that it will go high risk at some point. They might just be confident enough to pull it tonight, and by the time we have tomorrow morning's video, you'll be able to see it. But there is definitely some questions that need to be answered before then, especially with that latest 0Z run of the HRRR. Adam, what's up? Welcome to the stream. Northwestern Ohio for Saturday. It's going to be a lot of rain for the most part, honestly. A lot of rain. Really, if you're going to get some severe weather, it'll be the leftovers of Friday night. You'll see the line of storms continue to march its way further to the east. Some of these storms get there at around Saturday morning, early Saturday morning, 6 to 7 p.m. And then storms start to try and fire off once again in the early afternoon to the late afternoon. And then you just get a lot of rain for the majority of the night heading into Sunday. So I don't think it'll be too crazy for even just really the general areas of Ohio. A lot of wind. If you go to Saturday's risk again, where would you pinpoint the high risk? The high risk, in my opinion, if I had the choice to put a high risk, if I had a choice, it would definitely be right in here. That's where I would put the high risk. Right in that area. How much energy will the possible morning convection in the southern Mississippi really use? I feel like the atmosphere could recover for the main supercells, but I'm not sure. So the interesting thing about this environment is it doesn't matter how much it would use. It just fully depends upon where the storms go. If the storms clear out in time, you have an endless amount of energy in the Gulf. Look at this here, chat. Look at this streamline of energy that just absolutely gets sucked into the main risk event. You have an endless amount of energy that will just continue to pour into this event. It's just fully dependent upon where these storms go, because you can see this right here, this was created from the storms. The storms are still in this area at this point, and it takes out that energy only because the storms are right there in it. If the storms aren't, you could absolutely see a lot of this blue and maybe even some of these yellows covering some of these gaps. But because the model says it's a little bit different, and your northward extent is cut off by a lot of these storms that form over here along I-20, the northern extent of the event kind of suffers a little bit. So that's what we got with that. Do I think that Omaha is too dry to get anything tomorrow? I think it's possible for you guys to get some thunderstorms, honestly. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities. It just is fully dependent upon when the storms actually start to initiate. Because they will initiate. They will likely initiate sometime and somewhere around your area in Omaha. It's just when. So like you can see at around 2 p.m., some general showers. It's possible for you guys to get some stuff. A little bit after that, around 4 to 5, showers. There could potentially be stuff over there. But if there is one thing that I can confidently say, you're a little too far west for any significant severe weather. A little too far west. What about the Eastern Illinois risk? Eastern Illinois risk is really going to see a lot of damaging winds more than anything. But there is a very small chance for the stuff that happens in Western Illinois and Central Illinois to try and move over and try to become significant. So once again, 7 p.m. Central Daylight Time, some significant storms do start to form from Quincy all the way down into southern Missouri, eventually even into portions of Arkansas. And these storms will continue to maintain and impact areas like Peoria, Springfield, St. Louis, Carbondale, Cape Girardeau, all the way down. But it's fully dependent, as we mentioned earlier, upon how long the wind shear aloft can stay significant. Once again, the 500 millibar wind shear, how long they can be significant for. Because once they get to Eastern Illinois, the storms really start to die out. I mean, we're talking at around 11, 12 p.m. heading in, or 11 p.m., 12 a.m., 1 a.m., these storms really start to lose a lot of ground. They really do start to lose a lot of energy. So it just fully depends upon how strong the wind shear continues to be and how long it maintains that intensity for. It looks like by the time we get to around the midnight hours, which is around when the storms approach central Illinois, that's when they start to lose a little bit of steam. So Eastern Illinois, you guys should definitely watch out. But at minimum, I do think you guys should be getting a lot of damaging winds. Sunday looks like a lot of wind. That's the best way I can put it. Tell us about the fire risk. Absolutely, I can talk about the fire risk. So, fire risks. Big thing here, real quickly. Let's actually go to the, let's go Weather Bell and look at it here. So, we talked about how strong the winds are. Let's talk about the surface here. Let's take a look at our wind gusts. And we want to illustrate this real quickly because on the back side of this, there's a lot of very strong damaging winds. We'll play on, and we play on, and look at this. Friday morning, look at how significant the winds are. The wind gusts, at least, heading into portions of New Mexico, Texas, and Oklahoma. Some wind gusts get up to around the 70 mile an hour range. That's pretty intense. Heads over into Kansas and Missouri. Look at that. Once again, 60 mile an hour wind gusts over here, and that's not even with storms. That's behind where the storms are. So why is this important? Relative humidity is very low in this area, period. With a low relative humidity value, with a lot of dry air, any fire that forms, whether it's because of human error or if it's because power poles fall down onto the ground and ignite something, wildfires could become very, very sporadic. And so when we look over here at the fire weather outlook for the potential of some significant wildfires to be possible, it is a very wide range to where it is possible. But the main area to watch will definitely be within this red area right here. Some significant wildfires are definitely possible if the opportunity arises, and they will spread rather quickly. So, if anything here, folks, please do not go out of your way to light any sort of fires tomorrow. It is not a good idea. It is not a good idea unless if you want thousands upon thousands of acres to be burnt and spread to impact people. It's just not a good idea. Do not do it. So very, very, very dry conditions and very windy conditions translate to a very dangerous environment even behind all of it. Neighbors. Abigail, that's not legit. That's pretty funny, though. But that's not legit. What in the world? It's what you get for getting an apartment. Huh? Wow, I'm so excited to get an apartment that's with people in my walls. Wow, you make me feel so excited. Anyways. Some person asked about West Virginia. West Virginia, really, your severe weather is going to be moving on through overnight, Saturday into Sunday. But I really don't think you guys are going to be seeing a whole lot of sustained activity, if you will. If there is anything, it's going to be a lot of a lot of wind and a lot of rain. And that's pretty much it with that. A lot of wind, a lot of rain. It'll likely be overnight into the early morning hours of Sunday, though. It will likely be sometime around then. Let's get a couple more things here before we head off for the night, because I do want to get a little bit of sleep before I have to eventually make a video for you all, which, as I said, will be at 9 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Central. Make sure you guys turn on the notification bell, all right, your post notifications, so that way you are able to stay up to date with the latest information. And of course, we will be live again, and we will be talking about these storms in depth and what they will be doing, what type of risks they bring, including the tornado risk and how intense these storms actually are. So once again, if you're interested in that stuff, or if you would like to just be with someone to ride out these storms with, we're able to provide that for everyone who may need it, including people you may know as well. So feel free to share this around with other people as well. Alrighty. Could Central Illinois be a tornado watch or severe thunderstorm watch on Friday? Yes, I do believe so. That's not legit, man, bear, pig. That's not legit. Funny, but crazy. They can't issue a day 3 high risk, so you think they will issue a higher risk for Saturday storms on day 2? I think it's possible. I think with this latest 0Z HRRR run, I'm not as confident that they might do it for day 2. If they do it, it might be during the afternoon when the models are able to get a grasp on the environment a little bit better. But for right now, I'm a little bit on edge with whether or not they could uptrend. It definitely will be a 15 sig tour regardless. And they probably will add a 45 sig wind for northern Alabama. More than likely they will do that. What do I think for far western South Carolina? I think you guys could definitely see a lot of severe storms that move on through into the overnight hours. So definitely watch out, have a plan of action from Saturday into Sunday, just in case. What do I think about central/middle Tennessee? I do think you guys are going to see a lot of wind on the backside from this. Take a look at the latest HRRR run. You'll be able to see what I'm talking about here. So, storms Friday into Saturday. All right. Do not be surprised if you guys see some storms from 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m., 6 a.m. Somewhere within that time frame, Friday into Saturday. Do not be surprised. Storms are also definitely possible for the rest of the day there on Saturday. A lot of rain. And then you have the potential for some damaging winds even behind this too with this line. This could be moving off into your area at the latter stages of the evening there on Saturday. And then by the time you get to, say, 9 o'clock, Nashville's pretty much done. So it'll be just the edge of this line here, the edge of these storms, and then Dunskies. All right, get a few more here. See you, Kaylee. I appreciate you being here. Send me a picture of the eclipse if you do get it. Be looking pretty cool. What's the cape for the day 3 outlook? That's a good question. I think the best answer that we'll have for that will probably be with the North American model. Not the NAM 3K. The NAM 3K can go sit in a hole and think about what it's done. All right. Mixed layer cape for Sunday. Not a whole lot. There is not a whole lot of energy anywhere, chat. As I said, Sunday is really a lot of wind. Sunday is really a lot of wind. Yep. Sunday is a lot of wind. All right, a couple more things. Once again, folks that are along the coastline here, ranging from Lafayette all the way over to Pensacola, maybe even Panama City Beach, will definitely need to watch out Saturday night for the potential of some significant activity, significant showers and thunderstorms. There's also the possibility for storms to form overnight Friday into Saturday as well. So don't be surprised if that could potentially happen too. But yeah, these storms will continue to march its way further and further east. We'll definitely have to watch out there. Mississippi is definitely, specifically Tupelo. Tupelo is kind of right on the border of being in the main risk to maybe even potentially being a little too far north. If you're in Tupelo or if you're in anywhere in Mississippi, I would watch out, period. I really would. I think if there was only one state that I would ask to watch out for extensively, it would be Mississippi. Mississippi is absolutely under the gun in the main risk. See ya, Hell Advocate. Appreciate you being around here. Northern Iowa is probably going to see a lot of damaging winds tomorrow night. Metro Atlanta will definitely see some storms overnight from Saturday into Sunday. I'm expecting a lot of damaging winds to be the case, but there's the possibility for some spin-up tornadoes that are possible down there as well. Yeah, as I said, we'll look at this one more time here, and then I'll head to bed because I have to wake up in 6 hours. 6 hours to make a video for y'all. And then I have to leave in 7 hours to go to my other job. So fun stuff all around here at the Nate Snyder channel. All sorts of stuff, huh? Rye with the 2, thank you so much. I really do appreciate the super chat. It is a little late, so I apologize for not calling that out, but I really do appreciate the support. So here, once again, is the convective outlook for Saturday. Once again, significant severe weather is anticipated here within this orange area and this red area. If you're in the yellow, I would definitely pay attention for severe weather to be possible within your area and even on the outskirts. This is the outlook for tomorrow on Friday. We will be live tomorrow night. We will also have a video tomorrow morning talking about this and Saturday extensively, as well as parts of Sunday as well for folks that want to see it. But yeah, pretty strong damaging winds over in a lot of these areas with the chance of tornadoes. And then this is the risk for Sunday here. The potential for severe weather ranging from northeastern Pennsylvania all the way down into northern Florida. We'll go into continental, and we'll go to the North American model and we'll run through everyone in general real quickly just to be able to show you guys where a lot of these storms are going to be heading off towards. So, storms really start to fire off over here sometime in the afternoon into the evening. Once again, timing the top left-hand portion of your screen. Afternoon into the evening over here on Friday into portions of Iowa and Missouri. They start to extend further and create a lot of strong damaging winds. South of that here, near areas like Quincy and Springfield, all the way down into northeastern Arkansas, that is where the potential of some significant weather from tornadoes and maybe even damaging winds and hail can be associated with as well. So it starts to transition the further south you go into more of a traditional severe weather threat with significant storms. This will continue all the way through until storms start to weaken. Once you get towards midnight, they head off further towards the east. Some winter weather is definitely possible on the western side of this old low, so that would be the Dakotas, portions of Minnesota as well. And then Saturday morning, you can start to see our storms start to form over here into our next risk, with some significant severe weather anticipated across portions of the deep south. And as we head over from the afternoon into the evening into the overnight hours, you can see a lot of storms start to really move on through and march across as one giant line. We can see Atlanta starts to get some of the stuff in the early morning hours on Sunday. This model is saying sometime around 8 a.m. I would say give or take around 3 hours. That would be a safe bet as to when storms can move on through. Abigail asked about Pittsburgh. There you go, right there. We're talking about sometime around 11, give or take 3 hours. All right, sometime around then. Charlotte, 2 p.m., give or take 3 hours. You know, something like that, somewhere around that frame. Jacksonville, sometime around 5, give or take 3 hours. You know, stuff like that. Harrisburg, same thing. Move further east. DC, Baltimore area, Raleigh, Charleston, around 8 p.m., give or take 3 hours. So it's still fluid, but the general idea is that's when the storms are going to be moving on through across the majority of these areas. The main thing I want to highlight with the risk for Saturday, this could very well be an all-day event for much of Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. Those 3 states are the states that should be paying attention the entire day. The entire day. So, that is what I wanted to point out for you all. And that is where we shall end it. I appreciate everyone. We're at 370 likes. We're almost up to 400 likes. So I appreciate you guys liking up the live stream, subscribing as well. We've gotten over 100 subscribers in the matter of 24 hours, which is pretty cool. A lot of that is definitely because of the live stream we had last night, the video that we had this morning, which, once again, you know, you guys hitting that thumbs up button and subscribing and stuff like that, or even commenting, you know, that helps out the channel. It helps out spread our information to more and more people. That's how we get onto the YouTube algorithm, and we want to try and spread this message, especially since we have significant severe weather once again on the horizon with a multi-day tornado outbreak that is likely. So, you guys hitting that thumbs up button, you guys commenting, you guys getting to the video as early as you possibly can, you know, that stuff, it really does help. It really does. But I appreciate your guys' support there as well. Make sure if you know anyone that lives in these areas that we've talked about, that you just check in with them. With them. My goodness, I need sleep. Check in with them. Goodness gracious. There's nothing wrong with trying to check to make sure that they're safe. Make sure they have a plan of action. You know, make sure that if these storms do happen, prepare for the worst, hope for the best, stay safe. All right? You're going to want to be proactive and not reactive, is what Morgan says. So, have that. And yeah, I don't think there's much more I need to say, chat. Abigail, oh my gosh. Your neighbors will hopefully hit the bell. They hit something all right. I don't know what it is, but might be your sanity. True facts. Anyways, that's gonna be it for me, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate you all. I really do. I will see you guys tomorrow morning. Hopefully you guys get a good night rest. I will try to. As this entire weekend, I more than likely will not be getting a whole lot of sleep. We'll be here, more than likely live, more than likely covering this, at least to the best of our capabilities. But, yeah. Good night, everyone. Hopefully you guys get some good sleep. And I will see you guys tomorrow. So, peace out.